Okay, hello guys. Francisco from Neural DSP here, and we have another episode of the podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mike Spreitzer. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fine. So you went surfing last week?
I did. El Salvador. Never been there before.
Oh, are the waves good there?
Unfortunately, they were the smallest my friends said they were since they've been there like 11 times. But it was just big enough to have fun, so I got lucky.
So not too much adrenaline, but anyways, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you good at it or like just amateur level?
I would say I'm barely intermediate. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, but it's not like riding a bike. And unfortunately, going on tour, I have to kind of get back in the swing of things when I get back. But so that makes it a little bit difficult to improve.
Yeah, that's true. On those kind of sports, you have to, like, perseverance is the key. Hey, but for people that don't know you, can you introduce yourself? Who are you and why you are who you are?
My name is Mike Spreitzer. I play guitar in DevilDriver. I've been playing guitar since I was 10 years old. And I'm also I'm in the middle of producing the new Wednesday 13 record, which is almost done. DevilDriver is currently working on a double record that will be out sometime this year. Music's done. Dez is doing vocals, and I think that it'll be done in a couple months. And Steve Evans is working with us again.
Okay. And you have produced like some bands before, or you're more well known as a guitar player?
Well, definitely more well known as the guitar player in DevilDriver, but I've been producing and mixing bands for quite a while, but it's mostly been local bands up until the record that I'm working with, Wednesday 13 right now.
Okay. And you started producing because there was no one else around to do it, or you were just very interested since a kid, or how did it?
Well, when I started getting into the whole producing recording thing when I was in college and in Santa Barbara, mainly because I knew how expensive studio time was. So I got into it just to mainly record myself. And eventually I just found out that I have a love for it, and it's just fun for me, especially mixing. Mixing is my favorite part. I'm probably a little bit too organized. And, people think they come into my studio and like, dude, you are really clean and organized. I'm like, yeah, so, but mixing that's all it is just organizing different sounds together. And I also like it too, because you get to work on your own schedule. So if I want to take a break, I can take a break. If when I want to work, I can work. When I got back from El Salvador, I woke up at 3 a.m. because I was waking up so early there and traveling and everything. So I guess I'll get up and start working for the day.
Yeah. Better like that. And like, did you you mentioned the organization or organizing the session? Like, are you also organized between like tracks and you color code everything? And like, are you that strict with your organization and sessions, or it's just like you're just tidy, and for the rock and roll world you seem tidy?
Yeah, I definitely color code everything. It helps when you're scrolling through. Like, all my bass tracks are blue, obviously, and I'm pretty well organized with it, I would think.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, I think you have to be too. And Roy from Stone Sour is doing all the synth parts on this record, and so like the first time he sent me a bunch of tracks for one song, it was 45 tracks. And I'm just like, what? I mean, I love a challenge, so it doesn't bother me, but I just was caught a little off guard.
Yeah, I also have been in the position of receiving synths from someone, and it's like, you have almost everything ready, okay, we'll just put the synths, and it's like 70 tracks of like chunks here and there, and like fighting with each other. It's like, what the fuck was this guy thinking? Like, is it supposed to go all together, or what's the purpose?
That wasn't the case with Roy, though. He, I sent him all the stems, so he specifically, would know if he's stepping on any frequencies that I've already recorded. And he's got a huge analog synth rack at his house that I haven't seen in person yet, but it's all analog synth, nothing digital.
That's nice. Difficult to use though, like those walls of analog stuff.
That's one thing that I have not ventured into. I don't even know where to set it up. My studio is, I mean, it's not small, but it's not big, and yeah, I would just not have the room for it.
Yeah, exactly. But the synths are fun. Like I've entered in synths. Maybe I started like 6 years ago or something. I was like a little bit tired of all the rock and metal kind of sound. 8-string guitars, 7-string guitars, drop tuning, like whatnot, distortions and amplifiers and everything. The drums don't change that much, So it's like, then for some reason I ended up listening to Infected Mushroom, and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, this sounds cool. Like, how is this done? So then I started like reading about synths, and it's actually really, really fun. Of course, like analog stuff and patching cables takes a long time, and you need to be really good around your gear to be able to do it quickly before the spark of creation is like gone with the technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Which DAW are you working on?
I use Cubase, and a lot of Pro Tools purists kind of rag on me about that sometimes. But when I first started recording, Pro Tools I was using a PC, and when I was in college, this is when I was 18, 19 years old, and Pro Tools didn't work well on PC. So everyone told me Cubase worked well on PC. And also I do a lot of stuff in MIDI. And when we're doing DevilDriver demos, I program all the drums, and they just have a better drum editor than Pro Tools does. And I've actually thought many times about switching to Pro Tools just to make my life easier, as far as avoiding cross platforms when I'm, like on the Wednesday 13 record, we went to Steve Evans' studio to do the drums, and then it would have been nice if he could just give me the whole session, but he just had to bounce things down for me. But there's a couple things I know about Pro Tools that I like a lot better, and there's things about Cubase that I like a lot better. But I think people have this notion that mixing in Pro Tools is easier than mixing in Cubase, but I think a lot of those people have never used Cubase before.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what you use. Of course, like Cubase and Pro Tools are on the same leagues, and maybe it's also Logic, like totally fine.
It doesn't matter, and I have a lot of friends that use Pro Tools, and they're constantly, I think they've worked out the kinks right now, but even up to a few years ago, I think Cubase was a lot more stable, a lot less crashing. And that was another reason why I've never switched over. I do need to get a copy of Pro Tools on my computer and start learning how to do it. And I've just been stubborner about it.
Yeah. So how, for example, does a normal day look to you? Like, do you like to mix in the morning? Do you wake up in the morning to do your kind of stuff, or you are like all around the place?
Yeah, lately I've been waking up pretty early, but when we were doing in the recording process of this record, we'd usually start around noon. That's when all the guys would show up, and we'd do whatever needs to be done, and probably work until anywhere between 8 to 11 o'clock at night. Mixing, lately I've been waking up pretty early. The other day I started mixing at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. And, I usually have my laptop set up with a movie going or something like that. So when I'm bouncing things down or, importing stuff and taking time, it's just, watch a little part of the movie and stop it, get back to work. And, I'll take breaks throughout the day, so my ears don't get too fatigued. And I'll basically work until I feel like you get to a point where your ears get so tired, you're not going to hear things correctly. And if you're making changes to a song, there's a very good chance there are going to be bad changes. So when I start to feel that way, that's when I throw in the towel for the day and just chill out. And after working all day on music, I'm a little bit of an insomniac, and it takes me a good 2 to 3 hours to unwind after recording or mixing, to kind of, because my the riffs I've been hearing all day never stop in my head, and it just makes it impossible for me to sleep. But so yeah, 2 to 3 hours afterwards, after I'm done working for the day, and then hopefully I'll be able to fall asleep. Then wake up the next day and repeat.
Shut off whiskey and sleep.
That would have worked when I was in my 20s, but I noticed like in my 30s that alcohol was for some reason, like if I went out partying with the guys while we were on tour, I'd come back to the bus, fall asleep, but then I'd wake up in the middle of the night and then I would just be wired from some reason. And that wasn't the case when I was in my 20s, but the older you get, and to tell you the truth, the older I get, the less and less that I drink.
Yeah, it's painful. Like hangovers get more painful and painful all the time.
Yes, they do, and I hate being hungover. To me, I know I'm hungover because I'll wake up and I won't feel like drinking coffee. That's when I know I'm really screwed for the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So when you are, for example, like working on something, because you're also a musician, you play guitar and you started producing and everything. Like, I'll ask something first. Which part of it? Well, you said that you enjoy a lot mixing, but between songwriting and playing live and being in your studio producing or mixing, which one would you prefer if you would have to choose, or which balance would you put in percentages or something like that? What part do you enjoy the most?
I think I enjoy mixing the most, but it's not by much. Because, like I said before, I get to make my own schedule, and I like that. If I want to get up and go surfing in the morning, I can. If I need to, go visit my parents down the street or something like that, I can. Or just, you get to make your own schedule, and I like that a lot. I would say producing and being on tour with DevilDriver are pretty equal. I still do love touring. I've been doing it for almost 15 years now, and I, especially with the new guys in the band, not ragging on the old guys, they're still some of my closest friends, but, Ashes, my bass player, Neil, my guitar player, and, all the other guys, I mean, we just get along so well that we have this camaraderie on tour that I know those guys, all the guys in my band, better than I know my own family, and they know me because we have spent so much time together. Like, you can never be embarrassed in front of them. There's nothing you can't tell them. And it's just like this pack of brothers that are extremely tight because you have to spend so much time together. And, when I come home from tour, there's a part of me that, is burnt out, as well as the other guys, where we kind of need some space to recharge our batteries. But, I miss them. And it's coming home from tour. I used to think I was the only one, but I would definitely when I would get home, I'd be yearning to get home after like a 6-week tour or a 3-month tour or whatever. And it's just like, dude, I can't wait to get home and just lay in my bed or, be with my girlfriend. And I would get home, and I remember many times years ago where it just wouldn't feel as good as I thought it would feel. And it's just kind of a leveling anxiety, because I guess you kind of get stuck in a rut where like, wow, I was on the schedule every day and now it's gone. And I used to think I was the only one, and then I started asking other people that I toured with, and they're like, dude, I go through the same exact thing, and it doesn't last long. I mean, I've had it last anywhere between 3 days to 2 weeks, but sometimes coming home is hard, but it's relaxing at the same time. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's how it goes.
Yeah, like it's so, I guess that like touring with long amount of time, it's so hectic that then you've got like certain rhythm about like waking up, eating something, then go to the venue, sound check, you play, and then you have fun, and then you sleep, and then again and repeat, and then traveling. Oh, like it's fucking crazy. And then like all of a sudden you arrive home and it's like, oh, maybe I'll do coffee, maybe not. I don't know. It's like,
I definitely do coffee. I can't live without coffee.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm on it here.
There you go.
It's like 3 cups a day.
Mine's empty already.
Do you have any, like, for example, routines that you do like on tour to relax a little bit? Because I guess that sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, and of course there's a lot of problems that you might sometimes not be the one to, like, responsible to solve and everything, but still things that stress you out a lot. Like, do you have any routines for that in the studio, or on, like, when you're, I don't know, some people meditate, for example, or people do sports or jog, or I don't know.
I don't exercise on tour nearly as much as I should. You know, I always say I'm going to, but I never do. I exercise a fair amount when I'm at home. But my routine, you know, lately, I mean, it used to be as soon as the show was over, you know, go out and get hammered every night and just drink a lot. But I'm well past that. I just can't do it anymore. I don't really have the urge to do it anymore. If we have a dressing room, you know, I bring a little practice amp with me, and I always have a, you know, warm-up guitar in the dressing room, and, you know, I'll spend, you know, a couple hours just playing guitar. And, you know, I try to sleep until noon, because I don't like to sleep until noon at home. You know, when I'm at home, I'm up anywhere between 6 and 9 at the very latest. But I like to sleep until noon, because if you're going on at 10 o'clock at night and you've been up since 7, you're not going to have the right amount of energy.
Yeah, that's true.
But, you know, my guitar player, Neil, he likes to stay on the bus, and he'll stay in his bunk pretty much all day long, either reading or watching movies, and he could sleep all day, all night. I can't do that. When I wake up, I got to get out of my bunk. I got to go do something. Luckily, my bass player Ashes and my drummer Austin love coffee as much as I do, so we'll wake up and, you know, get on Yelp or Google, find the nearest coffee shop, and we'll go and spend a good 2 to 3 hours there in the beginning of the day, just hanging out and talking, and then walk back to the bus. You know, depending on the city, sometimes there's things to do. Sometimes you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I know you don't always have the time to go that far where the interesting stuff is.
Uber's made it a lot easier in the last couple of years, and now our phones with T-Mobile, you can actually use your phone in Europe and other countries. That makes touring Europe a lot easier. And I've always had a love-hate thing with Europe. When I first went there, my first tour with DevilDriver was, you know, with In Flames in Europe, and you know, I loved it. And then all of a sudden I started just despising going to Europe. But now I love it again. And I actually think I love it more than the States, because, let's face it, the architecture in the States is shit.
Well, I was only there in NAMM, and I was in Miami when I was very small, so I'm no one to really say, but okay, go on.
There's just, you know, parts are awesome. There's parts that are not awesome. But to me, just walking around Europe is a lot more pleasing to the eye.
Yeah, true. There's more history, probably.
Yes, exactly. And I've grown to love it again. I love being there. Tilburg is my favorite city.
What I noticed is that you can actually walk somewhere in Europe. Well, at least, for example, when I went there to Anaheim or LA, it's like, okay,
nobody walks.
Yeah, nobody walks. Like, how the fuck do I get out of here? Taxi or you're fucked. It's like, okay.
The Missing Persons wrote a song about just that.
What? Sorry?
The Missing Persons wrote a song about just how no one walks in LA. And it's totally true.
Incredible. I found it really incredible, to be honest. Do you have any musical background? Like, did you study any music, or did you just, like, start?
Yeah. My parents insisted I take guitar lessons, because I always threatened them that I had no interest in going to college. So we're like, well, if, you know, we can't force you to go to college. You're going to be 18, but, you know, because I wanted to go out and start a band, just do that as soon as possible. So they were like, if you're really serious about this, you're taking guitar lessons on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, which I thought was really cool of my parents. My parents have been incredibly supportive over the years. But I eventually, when I was a senior in high school, I really want, where I live is a city called Torrance, which about, it's 20, 30 minutes south of LA. And when I was 18, I kind of started to despise being in Torrance, and I wanted to get out of here. So I moved to Santa Barbara. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. And so I just started doing my general education the first year. And then I met a guy named DJ that I started my first band with, and he was a music major. And just, in my time with that band together and working with him, he encouraged me to, start a major in music. And the next year I started, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Then I transferred to, that was at the City College, which was actually a better education than the university, if you can believe that. Then I transferred to the university, and I spent a couple years there, and I did not get the education that I wanted that I got at the City College. And it was 3 times as expensive at the university. They just wanted us to focus on history more than anything. Where at City College, their 2 main things that they focused on were musicianship and music theory.
Yeah.
And, ear training and things like that, and counterpoint, things that you can use in the real world if you don't want to be a college professor. And then all of a sudden, I go to UCSB, and it's the complete opposite. I had to study so much for my history classes that I got straight A's when I was a music major in City College, but because I enjoyed it and it was fun, and it was hard, but I had a lot of interest in it, and I really liked the other students I worked with, and I really liked my professors. And then I went to UCSB, and they just focused a little bit on ear training. They focused a little bit on musicianship. I had to do vocal classes and a classical guitar class that I really enjoyed. But the amount of history information that they gave you that you had to absorb to pass the class, in my opinion, was just absolutely insane. Even, the professor's assistant, I'd go and ask him for help, and he would just be like, I cannot believe the amount of information, she is going to give you to study. And it was just ridiculous. And it really made me kind of lose my taste in, the music department. And I had 1 year to go, and then DevilDriver asked me to join the band, and I never got my degree. And I do want to go back. My whole family's been on my case. Well, I only have 1 year left, and there's a good chance I might be able to do a lot of it online now. I just haven't, I recently got all my transcripts from UCSB and Santa Barbara City College, but I just haven't contacted a counselor over at UCSB, or possibly transferring to UCLA and finishing my degree there. But I do plan on doing it. It's been 15 years, but I've been in the music industry since, and I think I think they'll be understanding about that, and let me use my credits that I've already taken care of toward my diploma.
Yeah, I think you can make it, man. I think it's a good decision. Just if it's just 1 year, why not? Yeah, I was also in music school, and I learned a lot of stuff. But I was talking yesterday to the other guest that we had in the podcast yesterday, that it was also a little bit disappointing. I was disappointed not during school, but afterwards. I was like, okay, when I got to the real world, I was like, shit, I don't know that much, as I should know. So first I studied 1 year of electrical engineering, and fuck, that school was really, really hard. Nothing related to music, but the amount of knowledge that they would demand from you and teach you, and the tests and all the content was overwhelming. And then I went to music school, and it was a little bit easier in that sense, but of course much more targeted for a different amount of people, classrooms much smaller. But then when I got out, I thought that I was missing a lot of content. So in my perspective, I learned a lot just by continuing doing what I loved, which is this. So I just learned a lot out of school. I think that it was a good decision to go through it anyway, but I just learned a lot outside from it.
Yeah, and that's what made UCSB so disappointing for me, because there were two main professors that were insistent, like, to weed out the students that they knew wouldn't be able to hang. So they kind of hit you hard in the beginning. And they have the first half of the year, they have, there's so many people. I want to say the whole, started out with about 60 people. And they had to have two classes going on at the same time, because they didn't have a classroom big enough for that many people. By the second semester, it got weeded down to about 15 to 20 people. So then they combine them, because that many people quit. And the very first day, my musicianship teacher, came up to me and asked me to sing like do re mi, in perfect pitch, and I couldn't do it. And she'd just see me after class, and I was like, shit. And I used to have a horrible ear. Horrible. Very good at theory. That came to me because I think it's mathematical, and that was really easy for me. But she was like, you're going to have to work your ass off to pass this class. And the first final that I took, I thought I did so bad on it that she gave it to me. I folded it up, stapled it shut. This was halfway through the semester, and put it under my desk. I didn't even want to look at it, because I was almost certain it was an F. So that encouraged me to work hard at the second half. And then when I got my report card, I got an A in the class, and I about fell over. So then I finally went home, looked under the desk, and looked at that test that I took, and I think I got like a B on it or something like that. It was just not nearly as bad as I thought it was.
But that's a good challenge. Like, you just proposed yourself to get better, and the best that you could give.
Well, they looked at, I had my, I looked like this full-blown goth kid in college. And I think they looked at me and just like, this ain't, you're surrounded by people that want to be more in like orchestras, and things like, exactly, blues, jazz, classical, music scoring or film scoring, stuff like that. And so I think they kind of, looked at me and were just like, dude, this ain't going to make it. But that was part of, it was just like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. And their attitudes toward me totally changed. I ended up writing a piece with one of my professors that she performed with for one of my finals, but she played harp and I played classical guitar, and it was, it was a really, really cool experience. And, I had to play piano for 5 or 6 years, and which, I haven't really touched since, unfortunately. But, I like playing piano. It was fun, and they made me sing. It was an all-around. Santa Barbara City College has an amazing music department. It's really good, and it's right on the ocean too. So the scenery is, a little added bonus.
Yeah, nice. That's nice. Yeah, I also enjoyed my way through it. I like what you describe. It's very, very familiar experience, and I also learned a lot about like other people's goals on music. Like, as you mentioned, like a lot of people that wanted to do score for films, and like the environment is really cool, and you learn a lot from other people too.
Yeah, and I started to notice too, especially when people started dropping out of the music department, that when I was in high school, I took guitar lessons with a really awesome guitar player named TJ Parker, and he started teaching me music theory. But there was these gaps that I didn't really understand. I got some of it just didn't click in my head. But when I started going to school for it and working on music every single day, it's like all those gaps started to get filled in. And there's three types of people in the music industry, or in music school. There's people that are really good at theory, and then there's people that are really good at musicianship, ear training, and then there's a small fraction of people that are good at both. I was good at theory, but there were some people that just couldn't get it. So, we had each other's backs. I'd purposely, when I had to, do some work and study, I'd find someone that was better at musicianship than theory so we could help each other out. Because I was able to explain theory better to them, and they were, there's not really a whole lot of explanation that you can do with musicianship. I mean, they would play chords on the piano and give you the root note, and then you got to figure out what kind of chord it is. They would play melodies, and you have to write it down just by hearing it. So that just took a lot of work for me. That was the hardest part.
Yeah, for me, like I was actually good on both, but I had a lot of struggle to apply the theory to the instrument, which is kind of bad. But then, like my jazz musician friends, they took me right away and said, like, dude, you gotta learn this. And I explained the other two to them, so they would teach me how to do it nicely on the instrument, because you can do the fucking chords there, but like how to make it sound nice and how to explore a little bit more the instrument. So that was actually nice. But it was very nice experience. But jumping to the other topic, like, cool that you went to school. Like I don't think I've found someone else that went to music school from all the podcasts that we have done. Interesting. So for example, like which year were you born? Sorry?
1981.
1981. Did you work with any analog gear when you started?
Analog amps, but
you started with a computer.
Yes, but just in the last 6 months, or not in the last 6 months, I've been using my Axe-Fx for a long time because I didn't have a proper studio to mic up an amplifier, so I got in this rut where I was like, oh, the Axe-Fx sounds just as good as a real amp, and I'm just going to stick with that because you have so many options. Maybe get myself a Kemper, which I haven't. But when I built my own studio and I have an isolation booth, I hooked up some of my old amps and mic'd up the cabinet, and it was just like, oh my God. That's what I've been missing. And now the Axe-Fx is great. I use it live. It makes things super simple, and it sounds great too. But it's still missing something. And the way the amp reacts to your playing, there's all these like upper harmonics that you don't hear. And go play some natural harmonics on a guitar through a fractal, and then go see what it sounds like. That's how you can really tell. That's how I could really tell anyway. And if you have the right ear, you'll be able to hear it. And then beyond that, I've started to get into analog summing when I'm mixing. So I got a summing box, and I also have an outboard bus compressor, so I don't have to use a digital one. And the difference is night and day. Your tracks just lock in and get glued together better, and it's totally changed my world. Steve Evitz has kind of like been my mentor in this whole thing, and he was just like, dude, go get a summing box, get an analog compressor, and you will be...
Those are two pieces of gear that complement the digital world very well. It's
very, very well, yes.
That's really picky, like really good advice there. Yeah, I've noticed so there's these little pieces of analog gear that make a nice difference. Like, for example, nice mic preamps, as you said, summing box, and like one or two like compressors, analog compressors, and like you are pretty much set if you want to get the taste of analog working with digital. They can complement themselves really well. Yeah,
and I don't even have mic pre's built into my my interface. I got a Apogee Symphony, but I have an API that I really like. I got another mic pre called by Stephen Slate's called a Fox, and I just got myself an SSL too. And they all sound a little bit different. Some color things a little bit more than others. Like the SSL is very, very transparent, so I have a tendency to use that when I'm miking up guitars. But I try. Another thing I've discovered is I try not to get stuck in a rut with using the same thing all the time, and so I like to mix things up. And it's not better or worse; it's just different. I've been using a distressor for the last 10 years for compression, and I was like, dude, I am so bored of using this thing. I want to get something else. So I got an 1176 clone made by Black Lion Audio called a 17, and it's awesome. Very affordable, too. And on the new DevilDriver, as well as the new Wednesday 13 record, we used a different amp setup for every song, and rather than just using one single amp for the rhythms. And, I would use a Bogner Ecstasy for one song, and then I'd have a 5150 block letter. I have a 6505. I just recently got a Friedman JJ100. I've got quite a few Mesas here. I've really gotten a little bit away from vintage 30 speakers and gone toward greenbacks and creambacks. I do like to mix them together, but the main tone that I get now is basically a 57 on a creamback speaker that I put into my Mesa cab. And sometimes I'll use up to 5 microphones, just using my summing box. Like I start with the 57 because that's usually the main one, and then I have a second 57 on there right now, and then I have a AKG C414, a 421, and what else do I have on there?
Do you have any ribbons?
I don't. I need to get one. I need to get the Royer 121.
Yeah, and there's another one, the one that we have in our plugin that works really well. It's the Bayer Dynamic. I think it's 184.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a little 58, like a very similar shape, but it's very small. It's killer, man. You should get one because it brings a lot of warmth and low end to it. It's really, really nice.
It also depletes your bank account quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. But there's some cheap ribbons too. You just need to explore. I mean, like those are the ones that people use the most. And I've had the luck to try them and I like them. But I've also seen people using like very cheap ribbons and getting very good results. So it's like...
Yeah. I haven't gotten it yet, but there's a company, I'm actually using a Aston mic right now called an Origin to record my voice. And I use they're a new company out of England, and they make fantastic microphones. And they came out with a new one this year that, I suppose is kind of similar to the SM7 that you're using right now. I haven't had a chance to plug it in, but I'm eagerly waiting for that mic to come because apparently you can use it as an active or passive. So you can, supply it. It'll change the tone of it for either using, phantom power or not using phantom power. So it's kind of like you get a dynamic and a, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for right now? No, there's dynamic microphones. What are the other ones called? I can't even think of it right now. Condensers, thank you. It's very early. I need another cup of coffee. So it's like you're able to switch it between a dynamic and a condenser mic, and also it has a few settings for guitar, a female vocal, and a male vocal, and I believe they have like a dark setting on it too, but haven't gotten it yet. Should be getting it very soon.
I like that there's a lot of companies doing new mics. Like there's also this Swedish company, I think, like doing like very expensive stuff, but really good quality things. It's cool because like mics, like the traditional mics have been designed like very like long ago. And there's a lot of like people designing new mics that are really, really cool things and applying new technology to it. And, like if it's like the like computational or DSP power of it, like for example the Slate microphone that you can like tweak the frequency response of it, and then on the other side like full analog, like top-notch components and doing like very boutique stuff. It's cool that it's like there's a new wave of microphone manufacturers, because I don't think you can have enough microphones, to be honest. That's what I think. But
Yeah, I've kind of discovered that recently, but I've only gotten into, believe it or not, microphones in maybe about 5 years ago, because in my old studio I had to do everything direct, and I never did much vocal recording until recently. And I wasn't able to mic up a cab for guitars. For bass, I still go direct, and obviously I use the microtubes pedal since my primary way of doing it. I did things a little differently on this Wednesday 13 record. I used a DI box, and had a signal go into the pedal, and out of the DI box, I went into a mic pre, and I actually used that as like the lower frequency clean tone. And then I used the cab sim and the 1/4 inch out of the dark glass pedal, and I mixed all three of them together.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good way to do it. Like, actually, the distorted sound without cab sim of the B7K, it's surprisingly nice.
It is very nice. And when I first tried the cab sim on it, I was pretty blown away. I was just like, I hadn't even messed with any of the knobs yet, and it already sounded good.
Yeah.
And I think the three hardest things for me in the studio: guitar tones, I could dial one in 20 minutes, no problem. Once I get it'll take me probably 3 hours to get the microphone set up the way I want. But once I get the microphones in the right place on the sweet spots on the speakers, getting a guitar tone is easy for me. Getting the proper kick drum sound, snare, and bass. Those are the three trickiest things for me. And it always takes me a bit longer to get it right where I want. And especially the bass. I've been trying so many plugins and using my Axe effects and, just different, like a Sans amp, the pedal or the rack, and just going direct. And, I would be able to get a good tone, but I was just never completely happy with it until, I tried out the Neural SP plugin. And immediately it was just like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. This is it. And, I got on the phone with Mark Lewis, who's worked on a number of DevilDriver records. And I asked him about the pedal, and he's like, dude, the pedal is just as good, but it's got a different quality to it. So I got the pedal too. It's like I say, I've been very analog these days. So I wanted to, I'm trying to go as analog as possible now.
Yeah, sure. And it's also fun. I mean, not everybody can afford it. And anyways, like, digital is on a point that it's getting better and better all the time. And the curve of acceleration is going like faster and faster. So for us, it's a very, very, very nice to be. It's very nice to be on this moment as developers of software, where we can like push the limits of technology and bring something new, and like compete with, like, of course, this thing about like competing with analog and like that kind of stuff. It's a never-ending story, and I don't think that it should be a topic anymore. Like, I like both, as you say. Like, if I have the pedal and I have the plugin, I would use it in different purposes, and that's completely fine. But we enjoy, of course, a lot. It's the challenge of like being on like at the same level. For us, it's like fun to do. And so it's really nice that you also have used the plugin.
Yeah, I've been using both, and you can use the plugin for a number of things. It doesn't have to be guitar. I actually tried reamping our kick drum sound through the plugin just to see what would happen, and I didn't end up using it, but it did make it sound cool. I just found a way that I liked better.
Yeah, I've run a lot of synths through the plugin, since it's so easy to run a stereo signal. Like, then you would need two B7K Ultras to do it. So it gets a little bit expensive, but
yeah, exactly. And the dark glass pedal isn't exactly cheap. It's a little pricey, but it pays off. It is worth every penny.
Have you tried our guitar stuff?
Not yet. I do have it installed on my system, and I actually tried. There's a song on the Wednesday 13 record where he's covering Films by Gary Newman, and it's a very weird vocal pattern. And I've been struggling with how to color his vocals properly on it. I still haven't gotten it the way I want. And I tried running his voice through the Fortin amp sim, and haven't decided yet if I'm going to be using it that way or not. But I haven't used it on guitar yet because I've been so busy.
Yeah, no, that's fine, man.
I've barely picked up a guitar since December 5th, hardly at all. And I got to start playing again pretty soon because DevilDriver has some touring coming up in May, and I need to get my fingers back up to strength.
Yeah, true. What? Just changing topic. What, for example, would you have done during your career that you would have said, like, I don't know, like why I didn't think about doing this before? It would have made my life much easier, or I would have learned so much faster. Or like, for example, like people in the mixing world, just one example would be like people get stuck with compressors like for years, and it's like, yeah, I'm doing this right, and then they figure like, oh my God, if I would have just put in 2-1, my life would be solved. Or I don't know, like shit like that you have learned through the years that you would have done differently, for example.
Well, it's funny you mentioned compression, because compression up until fairly recently has always just kind of messed with my head. Like the concept of it, and you don't want to, once you record into your DAW, you can always reamp it or, send it out of your DAW, go back into the compressor, and I suppose compress it a little bit more. But it didn't kind of click until recently, for some reason. And, it's been spending a lot of time, compression isn't compression. There's lots of there's like 5 or 6 main different types of, compressors that, you use for different applications. And it's finally started to, I'm able to absorb it because I'm using a lot more analog ones, and which sound better than a lot of digital ones. And I still use digital ones. I really try not to over compress things because, it's get a good start, but, if you over compress something that you've recorded, you might have to go and record it again, and then whoever you're recording is not very happy with you. But, which I actually had to do on this Wednesday 13 record, there's, I just didn't have I either had the pop filter too close to the mic, or I actually wasn't compressing it enough, I think, or my attack was off or something like that. And I started mixing one song, and the vocals sounded so brash, especially on the attack, that I told Wednesday, I'm like, dude, we got to re-record this song. Luckily, he's like the coolest dude on earth, and it was a very easy song to re-record. And I mean, it only took us maybe about an hour or two.
Ah, awesome. That's great.
Yeah, but as far as other things that I wish I would have done differently, honestly, I can't think of anything.
Cool. Yeah, that's fine.
I wish I would have gotten to the analog world a little sooner, I suppose. I mixed this record by a local band in Toronto called Tortured Saint a while ago that I really, really liked. I mean, I think it's part of the reason that I got the Wednesday gig too, because Dez manages Wednesday, and he heard the mix of that song and then suggested that I produce and mix Wednesday 13's record. And going back and listening to that, even though I just mixed it maybe about a year or two ago, the amount of information that I've learned in the last 2 years and the experience I've got, I almost wish I could go and remix that record for those guys, because I know I can make it sound at least like 30% better than it is. But, that's life. And that's one thing that people don't understand about being a producer and a musician is that once you're done recording something and you release it to the public, you're stuck with it forever. You cannot go back and change it. No,
but you got to commit at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to commit, but there's this stress level, and sometimes you can be very indecisive about your decisions. Like, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? I don't want to screw it up. But the more experience you get, I suppose, some of that anxiety goes away. But even Steve Evans was telling me that we were eating lunch together and he's been doing this for 25 years full time. And he says he still gets a little nervous working with a new band every time. He said it never goes away.
I guess that playing live is the same feeling.
No, I think it's a little different because as a producer, there's a lot of responsibility placed on you. It's just like, you can't screw up. Don't screw up, and they basically put you in charge of making sure that everything sounds the way it. Yeah. It's that alone could be stressful. And the music industry, especially the metal industry, it's a really small community. It's much smaller than, very picky. They, people look at it more like a religion than they do as music because, if you're a metalhead, you understand. But it's as far as the people in the industry, it's smaller than you think. You always run into the same people, and you're going to be judged by the quality of your work. And that alone could be very stressful. And, you can't please everybody. Some people are just never going to like it, and I don't like this. But I find there's an interesting thing about producers and mixers in the studio world. As far as I'm concerned, like Mark Lewis, Jason Sukoff, Steve Evans, even a little Ross Hogarth, who did the first DevilDriver record, have all been the type of people that will share their secrets that aren't really secrets, or their methods with me, and what kind of gear to buy. Jay Rustin just recently suggested the analog compressor that I got, and he saved me about $2,000 compared to the one I was going to buy. And we'll share and praise each other, and their mixes, blah 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 blah. But you get to front of house mixers, front of house engineers that do live, everyone else sucks. Except for they're gonna obviously say that Big Mick that mixes Metallica sucks. Everyone knows that he rules, but for the most part, they don't praise other front of house engineers.
Yeah, there's this competition type of thing going on.
Yes.
I didn't know that it was everywhere, man. I thought that it was just in some specific places of the world where I've been. But man, wow, I didn't know that you also thought the same.
Even some of the most humble dudes that have worked for us, still, nope, don't like his mix. Nah, sounds like shit, and it's just, man, you guys are fucking a stubborn group of people, and
I get what you mean. I hope people don't get fucking offended at what you're talking about, but I don't give a fuck. We are talking without any commitments here, so I don't care. But
well, I tell them this to their face.
Yeah, that's cool, of course. But I've stepped on many of them, and yeah, you're definitely right. The big percentage of them, it's really annoying, and I also get why they have to deal with a lot of people that don't know anything, and it's it probably gets them very irritated because then they're not like the studio engineer that the band is coming to record an album and they're trusting you and giving you man, you are God there in the studio. You can make things happen and you know your way around it, and nobody knows your studio better than you. But in a live situation, it's sometimes stage musicians can be very annoying. So I also get why they are on guard all the time, kind of. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've met one dude that was surprisingly humble, and he was so cool. This, Johan Meyer? He does all the live stuff for Gojira and also the studio stuff.
You know what? I don't think I've ever met him.
Dude,
but
I was there in
Gojira is the most amazing live metal band in my opinion. I mean, no one sounds better than them.
Wow, it was incredible. We were here in a festival and we went to them because because of Neural and also because of Dark Class, and their track got stuck in Switzerland or whatnot with all their gear. They had nothing to play with. All their stuff.
This was a couple years ago, right?
This was last year.
Oh, okay. Because I remember seeing a picture of Joe playing a flying V at a festival because their gear didn't show up. And I was like, That is so weird seeing Joe play a Flying V.
Yeah, but then they contacted us and it's like, man, please bring me one of those B7Ks with the cap sim. Like, please just bring one. And we went there, like we brought it. They played live. They sound fucking amazing, better than any other band on the festival.
Oh yeah.
And then we were with the tech hanging out, and then with Taylor, and then I was helping carrying shit onto the bus, just talking bullshit, hanging around. And then there was this guy with a little cap on his head. I was like, wow, guys, you really sounded fucking great. I just threw the comment, you really blasted this festival. By far the best sounding band on this festival. And then this guy comes like, oh, thank you, man. Yeah, I did the job. Like, thank you. I'm really glad that you liked it. It's like, you did it? Dude, you're a fucking wizard. Like, I don't know I don't know how you sound with your own gear, because this sounded like fucking amazing. And he's like, yeah, I do also all the studio stuff. He was like, super nice dude.
Yeah, I've heard. I didn't know if I've never really researched it, but I do believe the same guy that works with Gojira in the studio also does front of house for them. So apparently it is true from what you tell me, and I was just he really, really knows how to dial them in properly from going from one world to the other. And I don't think I've ever met another band in the last 15 years that has had someone like that on their crew. And I think that's very cool that they do that.
Yeah, we were talking about that topic for hours, how his perception of getting the studio world into the live world and how important he think it is. And I respect his opinion because it fucking works. So,
It does work. Every time I see those guys, I'm just like, how do they sound so good? It's just, it's incredible.
Yeah, really all very talented team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, do you have any anecdotes or stories that you want to tell to the audience?
Well, one that comes to mind is I never have the best luck when I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That place, I've come to call it Albuquerque because just a lot of bad things happen. There's a venue that we play there every time called the Sunshine Theater, and I'm not a person that believes in ghosts or supernatural stuff because I've never seen it. But there's a very sad story about a girl that was killed there by a guy and in the venue. And I swear to God, that place is haunted because I've had my amp just switch channels randomly. And it's just a weird vibe being there. I found out when I was there, I had to spend 2 birthdays in a row there, 30 and 31. We had shows in Albuquerque, and I'm just like, dude, this is the last city on earth I want to be. The crowds are great. Yes. I was there when I found out Corey from Guar died. I was there when I found out Mitch from Suicide Silence died, is where I got the news there. The last time we went there, our bus broke down and we had to, take a lot of our shit off the bus and ride with one of the other bands. And then we had to switch buses. It's just the only time I have ever fallen on my ass on stage, Albuquerque. And of course, Max Cavalera and his whole family is there watching us side stage. And I'm just like, oh my God, of all the times I could have fallen on my ass. And, I was talking to Max after the show, and he's like, bro, I fell off the stage once. So, dude, don't even sweat it. And I thought that was really cool of him to say that. But, I don't have very good luck over there,
Exactly, on that town.
Yes. I just, I think I'd rather live anywhere on Earth.
Did you see the girl? No, you didn't see the girl, right?
No, nothing like that. The story is 100% true, though, because we actually found a news article online about it because we were kind of thinking maybe it was just a rumor. But, it's 100% true. Yeah. things just go wrong. I've just had a number of things go wrong with my gear. That's just like, oh crap, something's broken. I got to fix it tomorrow. The next day it works fine. It's very bizarre. I'd be very curious to ask other bands about what they think about the Sunshine Theater and if they've had, weird experiences as well. But the crowds are great. It's one of our better markets. So it's like, we can't ever pass up playing there. There's a lot of metalheads in that town.
Just be ready.
Yeah. Just don't leave the bus.
Yeah. Do you use ESP Eclipses on live? I
think I might start again. I've been using V's for a very long time now, live, but I always use my Eclipses at home because playing a V is just not very comfortable sitting down. But I do have a new custom that from ESP that I think I should have sometime next month, and I had them make me a full Les Paul thickness Eclipse made out of mahogany and a swamp ash top. And I'm eagerly awaiting that too. And I'm also happy about getting that guitar because I made it, all my Eclipses are 24 3/4 scale. And I do prefer 25.5 because I got a fairly heavy right hand. So I like to get that tension out of the string. And so it's going to be a thicker Les Paul, style Eclipse. And I'm having the pickups. I always change this, but this time I'm actually having the pickups mounted to the body. And I did not get a neck through specifically because I wanted the pickups attached to the body, not the neck. And when you have a neck through, it's actually attached to the neck more than the body. And I'm really, and obviously I got a 25.5 scale with it too. So eagerly awaiting that guitar. And, the ESP has given me so many guitars. It's insane. I own 5 different Eclipses, maybe 6. And I like to put different pickups in each one of them, I've been I keep on switching a lot of pickups out for Fishmans because they're definitely my favorite right now. But
I have to say, I really got to try them.
They're really cool, man. I mean, I was using EMG 81s for a very, very long time, and I love EMG 81s. They still sound great to me, but as a guitar player and a musician, I like to change things up from time to time, and
I got my Eclipse, the one that I showed you, well, the one that is there, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
This one has I bought it like that used, and it has the Gibson's 490T.
Okay. I've never used those.
It actually sounds surprisingly good. Of course, you need a little bit more gain on the amp. That's always fixable. But they have a lot of boosted mid-range, and for some reason the palm mute sound really, really clean, and then you have all these mids blasting the gain. It's really, really cool. And then the other one has then the EMG 5761.
6657 set. And my rep at EMG gave me a set of those probably 10 years ago. And they just sat in a drawer in my studio for the longest time. And I was like, they have, the Paffy.
Yeah. I get the same feeling, and it's not convincing me either.
But I put those things in my 4-knob Eclipse that I showed you earlier. And dude, they sound amazing. They, I did all the tracking for the covers record of all the outlaw country songs that we did last year. And me and Neil, my guitar player, were, getting tones and trying to decide on what guitar to do. And that was our second favorite.
Okay, cool.
We ended up I have an Eclipse with bare knuckle aftermaths in them, which sounds amazing through my XFX. It sounds so good. You plug it into a real amp and it sounds like shit.
Yeah, well, different purposes, different things. Yeah.
I mean, it really does not sound good through a real amp, in my opinion. But for some reason, through my XFX, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I believe you, man. Which tuning are you using on the Eclipses? Because I as you said, you mentioned you have a heavy right hand. Me too. I hit strings fucking hard. I'm not good at soloing or anything, but riffing is my thing. And I have this one Eclipse I have with this DR 1365 set. It's really, really thick, and the other one is 1260. But what tuning are you in?
We're tuned to drop C. In the very beginning, the first two albums of DevilDriver and drop B. But after we did the second record, we were playing live, and our front of house guy was just kind of like, it sounds kind of muddy. Do you guys want to try tuning up to drop C? So we did, and I actually like that tuning a little better. I kind of feel like that's the lowest tuning a guitar can handle really well without having to go to a baritone.
Yeah, exactly. I think the same.
And so I use, my string gauges are 10, 13, 17, 30, 42, 62.
62 on top.
Yeah. And when I actually used a 70 for a little while when I was in drop B. But I was on a 24 3/4 scale playing my Eclipses back then. And then I slowly worked my way down. I was using a 65 for a while, and then a 64. And then when I signed up with SIT, I think I was at a 63 with one of my old string companies that I was with. But now since I think the biggest one they had was 62. So I'm like, I'll go to 62 and play a little bit lighter. But that's as low as I want to go. Yeah, I mean, my other guitar player, I believe, uses a 56 or a 58. And then our old guitar player always used like a 60 or a 58. But, and you do get a little bit more bite of tone with the thinner strings, but I can't stand the initial attack being in drop tuning and a little out of tune. It's like it takes a split second for it to go into tune, and it drives me crazy. So that's why I use the thicker string.
Actually, I just ordered like a guitar with Evertune exactly for the same reason. And like,
they're great. I have
so many good things, and I tried some like that are not mine to record and like, you know, fool around with them, and then like I love them. And then this Teemu Mäntysäry, the guy from Wintersun, he's a very, very talented guitar player.
Oh, I just saw them live a few months ago for the first time. They're amazing.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. He lives in Switzerland, but every time he's in Finland, because he's Finnish, he comes to see us to the office and we hang around. And he has modded all his guitars to put Evertune bridges. And I asked him like, dude, do you really don't feel any like weird differences with your previous bridges? It's like, dude, this is just fucking amazing. It's
just always in tune. I mean, I put my Evertune guitar in a case a year ago, and I brought it out because I like to use it mainly when I'm any kind of overdub octave parts. When you're playing octaves, I mean, it's always kind of a pain in the ass to get in tune sometimes, and especially when you're hovering around the 5th fret. And Wednesday 13, luckily, they're in drop C as well, so you know, I didn't have to reset up any of my guitars for those guys. But I'd always use it for octaves, and you know, sitting in there for a year, bring it out, perfectly in tune.
The demo said that they, for example, they don't even like tune the guitars before stage. They just put them in the truck. They go to South Europe or like Central Europe. Then they take them out. The tech puts them on stage, and like sound check done, straight to playing, and it's in tune. They don't even have to worry about temperature. Nothing. Like it's like.
You have to actually sit down and read the manual though on how to tune it though, because if you will not figure it out. Unless you do. It took me a little while to figure it out, and I was just kind of like, I was doing it completely wrong, and I was like, I don't know if these things are as cool as they you know, everyone's saying. But then I actually figured out how to do it, and I was like, oh yeah, these things are as cool as everyone says. The only disadvantage is the weight that it puts on the guitar. It is quite heavy, but you know, unless you have back problems, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't play much live, so it's pretty much like studio stuff, and for that it's like amazing the time that it saves not having to tune every minute, you know. So it's really, really nice.
I've been thinking about asking ESP if they can mod a couple of my Eclipses to put an Evertune in.
I don't know if they have done ESPs with Evertune. I think they have done LTDs or.
Oh yeah, exactly. The one. That's why I want to see if they can mod one of my high-end ESPs, because I do think they sound better, and you know, they're made in Japan and you know, not either Korea or Indonesia, where I think the other ones are made sometimes. And you know, you can get an LTD that sounds awesome, but I do believe the either the American-made or the Japan-made guitars sound a little bit better. They feel better too. I could close my eyes and you could put an LTD in my hands, or an ESP in my hands, and I bet I could probably get it right 90% of the time.
They're great guitars, though. Like, for the price range, I think they're really difficult to beat. I really love the brand.
They're a great company.
And they're like all amazing. 2 Eclipses and 1 M2, they never fail. They sound really amazing. They're really comfortable to play. It's like an incredible brand. I just really love them.
Yeah, the ESP is awesome. I've been with them since day one, and I'll never leave. You know, I got an E2 just recently, and I actually think I like it better than a lot of my other Eclipses. And they're just a great company. Cannot praise them enough.
Yeah. Anything else you would like to add? Something to ask?
Okay. I think before we started, you said something about how I get out of writer's block.
True. Yeah, that's actually a good question.
Yeah, that used to be a problem for me. And I heard from someone that if you can't write something that you like in 5 or 10 minutes, just walk away. Get up and take a break. Go for a walk. Go eat some food. Put a TV show on, and then come back. And that is one of the ways that I've gotten out of, having the whole writer's block thing. Another way is, if I really don't come up with anything, I'll listen to a song that I like, and obviously not rip it off, but there's one song called "You Make Me Sick" that we had on our album Beast, and I was listening to a lot of Testament at the time, and I figured out one of the riffs, and it's just I was like, oh, that's a scale I've never used before, and instantly, I wrote something I like, and came out to be one of the better songs on that album. We only have ever played 2 songs off that album live, and that was one of them.
Yeah, and also like trying to riff some other tracks also make you play different. For example, I love how, for example, In Flames riffs are built, and that like the way they play. If you just play a track on top of it, the way that you play the riff you can apply it to what you were doing before, or write something new with your own technique mixed, and that will help already. So it's just like you got to do something like outside of the box, Yeah,
and I also discovered that when I'm, like I said earlier, I program a lot of drums over the riffs so we can give the demos to Dez and he could start writing to them. And also for us to be able to cut the fat off a lot of songs, it helps, just listening to it in your car when you're driving and be like, oh, I'm not really feeling that, better change that. But I've discovered to never put drums over a riff, just one. I have to come up with 2 to 3 guitar riffs that I feel will work in a song together. Like, okay, this is going to be the chorus, this is going to be the verse, this is going to be the pre-chorus, this is going to be the midsection, and then I start putting drums over it. I started to discover early on that if I put drums over one riff and then try to write another riff to complement it in the song,
I'll never get out of that loop.
I would get stuck. And there's a lot of people out there that, I don't want other music to influence me. I want it to be 100% unique. And it's just like, bullshit. Inspiration has to come from somewhere. Whether you're not listening to anything at the moment, your style comes from all the things that you listen to, that you've grown up on. And, I listen to a lot of 80s music. I listen to, industrial is probably my favorite genre. And it took me a little while to notice, but I was like, holy shit, like some of my riffs actually sound like Sisters of Mercy, which doesn't sound anything like DevilDriver. But if you listen closely on some of the songs I've listened to, it's definitely there, and I didn't notice this until probably years after I wrote whatever. I can't think of what song it is that reminded me of it off the top of my head. But, I think it's better for people to embrace that side of things, and it can also help you get out of writer's block. Go listen to something, and it doesn't have to be metal. Sometimes I'll go put on Depeche Mode or something like that, and that alone will inspire me to write something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of people that do that also, and like go out, or like, as you said, go and eat something, grab a coffee, or I feel that sometimes that when you push it so much, the only thing that it does is like it gets you trapped into, especially that, as you said, if you have one riff with like the drums and you start like looping it and like crafting the sound and that kind of stuff, that's like hell. Like you never get out of it. Like, I can start making this kick drum sound nice like right away, and then you start looping these 8 bars all over and over again. And it's like, yeah, we'll add some riff, and everything that you do feels that it's not supposed to be there and feels wrong. And it's very difficult to get out of. There's also, if you have, for example, a song that it's 1 minute and you have like 2 riffs stacked, and then you listen it to in your car, then you listen it in your headphones, then you listen it back in the studio, and then you never do anything new to it, and you've been listening to it for 1 month, it's very hard to get out of there. It's very, very difficult. So listening to new music and playing around, like, I don't know, do a metal solo on top of the Depeche Mode track, or like play it in different style. I don't know, just the way of playing also affects a lot. Like there's many good ways, but nice that you mentioned that. Anything that you would recommend to for example, people that are starting on this business, that they want to have a band or a studio, or their dream is to like whatever related to music industry? Is there any like advice that you would give? Anything? It can be, for example, books that have nothing to do with music, or like, I don't know, whatever you want to mention.
I get that question a lot, and I think the first and most important thing is make sure you're in a band with people that you can get along with, because you guys could be the best musicians on earth, and you could make it all the way to the top, but you're going to be miserable because, working day jobs when I was growing up, I worked at my dad's hardware store for a long time, and then I worked at a video store in Santa Barbara, then I switched to the UPS store, and then I worked at Starbucks. And Starbucks was far and away the coolest day job I've ever had, because like UPS store, for example, no one wants to be there. They're mailing stuff, they're getting their mail, Xeroxing. It's just, there's no benefit.
You gotta carry box again. Fuck this office. Like,
yeah, but I mean, Starbucks was the best of both worlds, but I still worked with cool people, and that made the job okay. There was one manager that tried to, she was stealing from the store, and she tried to accuse me of it, but luckily the owners knew I wasn't doing it, and I caught her red-handed stealing from the store. And she was just making my life miserable, where I had to call up my boss and be like, I can't work with her at this location. You're going to have to put me at a different store, because she's literally accusing me of, oh, they did eventually. Yeah. Put a big ass smile on my face. And she knew I was part of the reason. I'm just like,
dude, she was stealing. You were not part of the reason. Like,
oh yeah, stealing cash straight out of the register, and like they would call me up and be like, did she leave? I'd be like, yeah. She's like, count the register now. And it would be like $20 or $40 off to the penny. It's just like, she wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, but she made my life miserable. But it's the same thing with a band, even if you guys are just in a van and touring, just getting started, if you're with cool people, it's going to be so much easier. And like I say, not ragging on the old guys in DevilDriver, but there was a lot of bickering in the writing process, because we just had different styles. And when Neil and Austin joined the band, we've done 4 records together now. We've never ever been in one single argument, not on tour, not in the studio. It's just, the writing process is so much healthier, and I think we get, better songs, and it's just so much more fun.
Yeah, and I guess that like with a lot of musicians, and well, I guess that when every time that you work and that you have you have to do teamwork, there's a lot of ego going on, and in musicians, that's a very hard topic. And like people have these high egos most of the time, especially if you're like composing music. That it's like, why not? This is better, and you cannot say this is better or not because it's so ethereal in one sense. Then on the other hand, it's not. It just works or not. But it's difficult to get that balance of being able to work with that amount of people and get good decisions and the right decisions fast and without big arguments. That's something that gets the workflow running. Everything is easier. Everybody's happy, and it makes everything just much better.
I think also too, you're a lot more stubborn when you're in your 20s about music. As time goes on,
About everything, probably politics, whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And it's my riff's better. No, my riff's better. And it's just like, dude, they're both good. They're just different, and it's just compromise on it, or just, at the end of the day, once the record is out and a couple years have passed, you don't give a shit about who wrote what. Half the time, I can't even remember what I wrote. I'll be like, who wrote that riff? And they're like, Mike, you did. I'm like, I did? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like that one. But
if it wouldn't have been his, he would have liked it anyway.
And I was completely guilty of being that kind of musician, in the early days of DevilDriver. But I just got a lot more open-minded to other things and started to realize, like, I was so trapped in music theory mode that I didn't really venture out from it. But luckily, all the old guys in DevilDriver, they just used their ear to write riffs until it sounded cool. They didn't know any scales. There were very few. And they really opened my eyes and got me out of that music theory rut. And now I always say that's why it's called music theory and not music fact, because it's just a theory, and you use it as a guideline,
just
but don't
tool in the toolbox, and that's it.
Yes, don't get, and it's a really, really good tool, but especially if you're writing, harmonies on guitar and stuff like that. If you don't understand how major and minor thirds work when you're adding a harmony on top of a solo, like, I don't even need to play it I just know where to go. And that's how I harmonize most of my solos when I do is thirds. But it's not the same pattern as the root, sometimes it's got to be major, sometimes it's got to be minor. And a lot of people don't understand that. So they'll harmonize in fifths or fourths, which I think can be cool, especially if you're using it in a counterpoint fashion where you're mixing it up. But for the most part, I just use thirds. But I write a lot of riffs that would be considered wrong to someone that is like a music theory purist.
Yeah. It's never good in life to be just like absolute about things and like this is right, this is wrong. Like life is not like that. Like everything's gray, and you just need to be open-minded, as you said. And you learn from the fact of people not knowing something. You learn from them too. So I mean, it's another tool in the toolbox, and you gotta use it. Mostly, it's very handful when you have to solve problems. Like, okay, I have to write a choir on this. Like, how do I distribute the voices? Okay, now I know, because I know that I can put all this stuff, and I know the notes, and it's just faster. That's it. Like, you can get to the same point if you got a good ear. You probably have good taste. You can get away with it. It's not a problem.
And if you're in a situation where you have to improvise on the spot, what key you guys in? This key, okay? Find that note on guitar. And that's the coolest thing about guitar. It's not like piano. Like you learn the shapes of the different scales, and you can apply it anywhere on the guitar. And it makes it so easy compared to other instruments.
You can just tune guitars in different tunings, and then you're
Exactly, yeah, you could do that too. But you just need to find that spot and then just kind of not look at the guitar. If you have to go do a solo over some kind of, if you're in, D minor or something like that, it's like, your minor scale. You probably know two minor scales. If you harmonic minor, melodic minor. You can, a lot of metalheads use Phrygian a lot, and it's just like, yeah, just find the root note and go. And you're not gonna use find a bad note. It's gonna, some will be more dissonant than others, but for the most part, it's gonna work.
Yeah, it's a good base to have. I always encourage people to at least like get interested in it, because like a lot of people that I've told them, like, dude, just read about it. It's really interesting. Because I was also like, nah, I'm not gonna learn that shit. Like, I have a good ear, I know what I'm doing. And it's like, when I went to school, it's like, okay, this is actually interesting. It's actually maths. I'm good at math. I can do this. Okay, and it's another tool that I use all the time, and it's really handy. But of course, people get away with it, and without it, and it's completely fine. So it's just like a matter of how you do music. There's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, man, I think it was like fucking awesome to have you here. Like, we should do this.
Yeah, it's been good. Definitely.
Yeah. So how does your future look like? Where are you going now?
Well, we're off until May. I'm producing the record, which I'm almost done. I think I have like three more songs to mix, and just waiting around until May to go to Japan, and I believe we're going to tie in Australia into that tour in May, and then we have a tour with Static X coming up in the States. I think that's all that's planned at the moment right now. I haven't, sometimes Des doesn't like to tell us about tours that he's planning sometimes because a lot of times things fall through. So usually I find out about tours on Blabbermouth or PRP or Metal Sucks and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, we're doing that tour. And I'm kind of glad he doesn't tell me about that because there have been a lot of tours that I've gotten really excited about that have fell through. So I don't even want to believe it or tell anybody about it until I actually see it online, venues, dates. Like, okay, it is solidified. This is happening.
Somebody else takes care about that. So, it's kind of better that way.
Luckily, I just have to worry about playing guitar for the most part. It's pretty awesome.
Okay, well, nice to meet you, man, and hope to have you in Finland soon. If you come to Europe, of course, you're invited to the office and pop by and try some new shit that we're working on.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, well, see you next time.
Okay, see ya.
Thank you, bye.